Welcome to this week's crypto update. And what do we have for you this week? Well, of course, it's all about the macro. What's happening with Trump, tariffs, and the rest. And of course, that has a direct effect on the markets, as it has been for quite a while now. But for me, it's all about this piece here. Bitcoin 93.4k up 7%, Ethereum $1,800 up 15%. Why this one? Well, you might look at that and go, well, it just shows that the market had a significant rally off the back of a little bit of a pullback from Trump and Bassett when referring to the tariffs, the deals with China, etc. But for me, the key here is Ethereum. I want to look at Ethereum with you today and try and point out to you why I think this is the absolute key. If you look at traditional bull markets within crypto and then look at what decides the all season, it has always been that Bitcoin rallied first, Ethereum followed, then it rotated down into the major caps and on into the mid cap, low caps. That has traditionally been how it's happening. Many people have written this off now because, of course, we saw Bitcoin have its rally, and I'm not suggesting for a second that's finished, by the way, but it's had its rally. Then we saw things like meme coins and projects that did well off the back of meme coins like Radium and Solana and so on. And many feel that that was that altcoin season and that's how it's going to continue. I completely disagree. I think we're going to see the traditional style come back. The narrative has completely gone against Ethereum and it has been for many months. The idea is that the likes of Solana and Sui and others are going to basically eat Ethereum's cake and leave it behind. I don't think that's the case. While the narrative has gone against it for a while because, many factors, but one is that Ethereum has really focused over the last couple of years of ensuring that layer 2s can scale, which then, running on top of its rails, on top of its platform, on top of its security, and, the fact that it's the most used chain, they went for really promoting the layer 2s that were built on top of Ethereum in a way to its own detriment, because what that meant was people were, going on top of those rails, which were much faster and cheaper, although still built on top of the overall Ethereum ecosystem. But it meant that the revenues that Ethereum itself were generating were taking a significant hit. However, it's a longer term view. And as they continue to allow these L2s to scale on top of what it's built, I believe over time we will see the revenues. Certainly when the overall crypto market continues to build, gets more use and more use case, then I think Ethereum will do extraordinarily well and will have set up a stronger platform than anybody else. On top of that, they are working towards having people now to go out and speak on Ethereum's behalf, going into the banks, the institutions, to explain to them exactly where Ethereum fits in the overall scale. And I think they'll build interest there. Bearing in mind, the ETFs are already there, so it's already trusted, but it will be seen, I believe, to be the most trusted, secure, proven smart contracts platform above and beyond any of the others that have come in and done well. No one's questioning that. Solana has done extremely well, but it has had its issues. It's not running as long. And while it grew very quickly price-wise recently, it also dumped quite hard when the meme coin mania went to the side. I'm not saying for a second that's done with, but I just think Ethereum has built something stronger. So I think as the narrative moves and changes into positive side, which I believe will happen for Ethereum, as people are going out explaining what Ethereum is about, and bearing in mind, once institutions understood what Bitcoin was about, banks, governments, and by the way, explain that as pretty simple. It's not even a sentence, a few words. It's digital gold. People understand that, they get it. It's very easy to explain. And then you have people like Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy out there actively promoting it and building on top of it. I believe the same is going to happen for Ethereum. it takes longer for it to be explained. Now there are people going out there doing exactly that on the overall Ethereum's behalf. I think as institutions start to really grasp and understand this, I think Ethereum will make big moves. And so what I expect in the overall market to happen is I think we see more chop sideways for Bitcoin. Lots of volatility, spikes up, spikes down, because ultimately what's happening with Bitcoin isn't based on the 4-year cycle. It isn't based on something new that happened with Bitcoin last week. It was simply a pullback from, Trump and Best and about how hard they were going to go on China and tariffs and so on. And just by putting a little sneak peek into the idea that they weren't going to be just as hard, still saying they were going to be there, the market pumped. Bitcoin pumped. The market's pumped. All based on that. What happens if Trump or Beston comes out with something slightly negative tomorrow? Will they all dump again? I believe so. So ultimately, the movement of Bitcoin or Ethereum or other crypto at the moment isn't really based on what they're doing themselves, what development they're doing themselves. It is simply all down to the macro. And so, as the macro fluctuates, which I believe it will for the next couple of months, as the US try to do their deals with the various countries, see where it takes us with the likes of the Chinese, I can't see all that happening in the next week or 2 weeks. Therefore, I see huge amount of volatility, lots of it by design. Trump, I believe, wants volatility in the markets, wants volatility in order to bring the rates of bonds down so they can refinance the 9 trillion worth of government debt that has to be refinanced this year. So I think all this has been done by design. I think it's going to last for another at least weeks, but probably months, 2 to 3, until they come to their own 90-day deadline that they gave themselves to before they brought in these really serious tariffs on these countries around the world. I think the negotiations are already happening, and I think gradually we will see deals being done. At the same time, I think the Fed will be in a position to start reducing rates. We're already seeing that happening elsewhere around the world. I think liquidity will grow, and when you combine all that, I think we're in a position where the likes of Bitcoin can truly take off. And once that happens, I believe the key to knowing when we get into the actual altcoin season is based on Ethereum. So let's continue. So what caused both Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so much others to rise? Well, after weeks of mixed messaging on tariffs and historic market volatility, the US staged a sharp rebound Tuesday after Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told investors behind closed doors that the US-China trade war could soon see a de-escalation, according to a Bloomberg report. Regarding the current US-China tariffs, Bessent said at a private conference hosted by JP Morgan that no one thinks the current status quo is sustainable. Even though no policies actually changed, markets took it as good news. Each of the 3 benchmark climbed more than 2.5%, so the markets in general. And like I said, we saw Bitcoin climb, but very importantly, we saw Ethereum climb even more, and that hasn't been happening. I think this is a little marker as to what can happen down the line. But where has Bitcoin or Ethereum been running? Well, we can see here for the last 4 months, Bitcoin has very much been on a downward trend. And when it hit $1,500, I was very much saying this looks like a good opportunity to get involved in it. Right now, it's just under $1,800. I still think very good value for where I believe it's going to be during this bull run, but I think it needs to, crack this line before we can truly say that we're into altcoin season. I think it's very possible we see Ethereum even lower than it is now, and I think it can go as low as $1,200, maybe even less, if Bitcoin continues to chop sideways for the next couple of months, which is my base case. If that were to happen, I think this offers massive value in Ethereum, because I think this is going to surprise many in the bull run. A lot of people have been writing it off. I've given you some of the reasons why I think that may not be accurate, and I still think it's going to be the marker that decides when we're in altcoin season. And somebody obviously has a very positive feel to this, because someone has been buying Ethereum at these lower rates. A dormant whale, not just a whale, it's important here that it's a dormant whale, someone that hasn't been active at all, has suddenly scooped up 60 million worth of Ethereum when it got to a price that they were obviously happy with. I think this is a really good buying price, but I think it's possible we see even lower. But back to Bitcoin. What can we say and see about Bitcoin? Corporate Bitcoin adoption in Q1 of 25 is the highest it's been. You can see this golden line here. The Bitcoin holdings now is over 95,000 Bitcoin. You can see here it's constantly been on the increase with the exception of Q2 of 22. And every other month after or quarter after that, it's been growing. So that's going back as far as Q1 of 2020. So a continuous rise bar one quarter. So we've seen continuous rise. You've seen corporate demand is outstripping new supply. This is important. In Q1 of 25, there was just under 41,000 Bitcoin mined, so new Bitcoin coming into the marketplace. In the same time, corporations acquired 95,000 of it. So well over double, 2.3 times more were bought up by these big corporates versus what was actually mined. And the key about these corporates is they're buying these long term. They're not buying it today to sell it in a month or 6 months. They're buying this with a long-term yearly view, which means it's more and more Bitcoin going out of potential circulation for supply. And as you reduce supply, if you continue to increase demand, which we're starting to see, you know which way the price goes eventually. Corporate ownership of Bitcoin supply is bonkers. In Q1, corporations gobble up 95,000 Bitcoin. That's 0.45% of the total supply in a single quarter. You can see the direction this is going. And in total, corporations own 688,000 Bitcoin, which is 3.2.7 of all that will ever exist. This is massive buying power, and it's only getting going. Here we can see the Bitcoin demand for US spot ETFs versus new supply. So since the time the ETFs have been created, there's nearly 530,000 Bitcoin being bought at a time when only 250 of them were mined. You can see the direction this is going. The buying is completely outstripping the new supply, and the existing holders aren't selling. We can see here, it's not just corporations, it's also governments. Global governments now collectively own nearly 2.5% of the total Bitcoin supply. And you can see the biggest ones here, US, China, and UK. And here's the overall mapping of countries that are buying Bitcoin. I think it's very interesting to see in here that Ukraine has managed to buy nearly 4 billion worth of Bitcoin at a time when it's requesting money from countries and the US to help it with its war with Russia. But at the same time, it has managed to find nearly 4 billion to put into Bitcoin. But as you can see, a number of countries now starting to accumulate Bitcoin. So we've between governments and big corporations now, 6% of complete supply that will ever be is gobbled up by, you would imagine, countries and corporations that have zero intention of selling. Here at the same time, we can see the SEC is relaxing its stance. Here are all the companies that were in trouble with the SEC, and now all of these have been dropped. Uniswap, OpenSea, Gemini, Consensus, who owns MetaMask, Binance, Coinbase, Robinhood, Ripple, Kraken, Yoga Labs, and so on. So you can see here, things are really easing from the SEC side. So an awful lot of things playing to show that crypto is absolutely moving in the right direction at really rapid rates. Bring into the fact that we now have stablecoin transactions are now higher than Visa payments. Unbelievable. Back in 2018, Visa was doing over 8 trillion a year. Stablecoins were pretty much non-existent at that stage. And now we can see stablecoins have bypassed. Visa have grown to over 13 trillion and stablecoins have gone beyond that. Incredible stuff. Here we have the Bitcoin quantile model. Basically, what does this show you? It shows you where and when it might be a good idea to buy into Bitcoin based on this model. And based on this model, once it's into the light blue section, it's really good value. The heavier blue section, extraordinary good value. Well, at the moment, it's just touching off that light blue value line. And of course, then you look into the light pink and the deeper pink. These are the times when you see high prices on it. It's suggesting based on that during, if it moves into that pink range, what it tends to do in bull runs, and you can see it's only barely touched off it yet. So I think another indicator to show that this bull run is not done yet or anything like it. Based on that, if it were just to touch off that anywhere between that 60 to 95%, you're looking anywhere from 101k Bitcoin, which is obviously higher than it is right now, anywhere up to sort of 200 to 300 grand Bitcoin in this run. And if it was going to that historic peak, that deeper pink, which it has in every other occasion, then you're looking at Bitcoin anywhere from 230k all the way up to 400k in this run. So highly likely there's plenty more room to go in this run based on this model. So it looks like Bitcoin hold waves one of the clearest snapshots of market conviction. Almost 70% of all Bitcoin hasn't moved in the last 6 months. Now, bearing in mind, during that time, it has moved from 109k all the way down to 74k. And despite that massive volatility, 70% of it never moved during that time. What does that tell you? That people with it have massive conviction and are holding on, which means it's not available for sale. At the same time, you have governments, institutions, corporations, private businesses buying into Bitcoin, again with a long-term strategy. So you have a huge amount of holders already in place. You have new big money coming in, also with high conviction long-term strategies in place. This 70% is just going to grow and grow, which means there's going to be less and less coming in and out of the market for sale. And at the same time, I believe you're going to have extraordinary growth in the demand for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to shoot the moon at some stage when the dust settles here. Once we go through the sideways chop and things get sorted out in the tariff side, we're going to see interest rates coming down in the US at some point in the not too distant future. We're going to see a huge amount of money supply growth in the overall world, whether US, EU, Japan, China, elsewhere, and some of that's already happening. In fact, if we look down here, skip one, the ECB has already cut its rate 7 times. They've already done it 7 times. The US has only done it twice. Once the US start to reduce the interest rates, tariffs are solved. ECB is already out printing. The US, I believe, will do the same in the not too distant future. We'll see a massive growth in money supply. We're going to see huge money printing, I believe, in the US and elsewhere, China and elsewhere as well. I think this is just lining up for an unbelievable bull run. Some people are questioning whether this run is done or not. I think we've only seen the absolute tip of the iceberg. There's much, much more to come. And that brings me back to where I started. Bitcoin and Ethereum. Bitcoin is the king. Of that, in my mind, there's no question. I think we'll see more and more demand absolutely grow for Bitcoin by more and more long-term holders. I think we will get to a point where we're going to have 90% plus of Bitcoin locked away for long-term, which leaves a very small amount of it available for people who are buying and selling. And the people who are buying or selling are going to hold on for higher and higher prices over time, all at the same time as demand growing at a massive rate. Where the top is for the Bitcoin price, who knows? But we've given you an indication there. Maybe it's 150, 200, 250 in this bull run, or maybe it's more. In that world, I think Ethereum is due for explosive growth. I think even at these prices, and these prices are very good, I think Ethereum can do a 10x from here, but certainly if it gets back down to the 1500, 1200 mark, I certainly would have confidence that it can do a 10x from there, maybe significantly more, because I think the narrative is changing. I think they're moving towards really promoting it now to big money. Big money has access through ETFs as it is, and here's the key factor for me. It won't be long when ETFs will be able to be staked and institutions will be able to earn a yield. And there's one thing that institutions love. It's number one, it's stability, security, regulation. Ethereum ticks all those boxes. Then you have the evangelists that are now going to start educating and spoon feeding these institutions and governments as to what the benefits are of Ethereum, and then add in the fact that they're going to be able to make yield from it. I think is what's going to, number one, make Ethereum explosive. Number two, bring back the narrative that it is the king of the smart contracts and everything that goes with that. It is the more secure, best proven platform. It's the one with the most developers. It is the key, and it is the best smart contract platform, I believe, and will show itself to be. And that is the reason, many of the reasons why I think One thing that will be the same as the last run is Ethereum will be the key to let us know when the altcoin season is back. Bitcoin will do its own thing. It might even start decoupling from the overall market. And that's a video I'm going to do in the not too distant future. Is Bitcoin going to decouple from the stock market? And more to the point, is it going to decouple from the rest of crypto? And that's why I think Ethereum, once again, is going to be the key to tell us when the altcoin season is back on. And that's why I coined the phrase, Bitcoin is king, but Ethereum is the key to the kingdom. Hope you found that useful, and we'll talk to you all very soon.